G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode where we're restoring a 46-foot John Pugh motor sailor. So this week I want to try and get onto doing some work on the shipping container and get that secondary roof started, and then we'll move on to doing some more work in the bow. And I want to try and get my air compressor all set up and my sandblaster ready to go, so that when we finish that last section we can start prepping everything ready for paint. So without further ado, let's get started. So first job of the today is to get the timbers put in for the secondary roof. I welded in these brackets the other day and they're not going anywhere, and I'll just be fixing these with some screws. These are M10 screws, nice and chunky, so they'll go in to these holes, and then I'll position this one in the mid of that hole, and on the other side I'll position it in the middle of that hole, and that way I'll have about a 20mm fall for the water to run off down the back side, so the water doesn't drip over the front of the shipping container where I'll be coming in and out. So we'll have a slight taper going that way, so the water runs off and falls down the back. So that's the first bit of timber in. They're just going to have 2 screws. It's not going to break. Nice and strong. And we're going to put the same on this side. So that's both these sides done. Now I'm going to join at either end and then see how much timber I've got left over, and maybe put some runs in the middle. Doesn't really need it. If I find that the timber's bow, I'll weld in some more brackets and put another timber going lengthways, but we'll see how we go. So I just finished laying out all the timber on here. This piece here is on a slight angle because I wanted to avoid this knot here. There's a piece missing and I couldn't get some screws in the right position. So as you can see, it's off on a little angle. I opted not to buy structural timber just to save myself some money. But unfortunately, not buying structural timber meant there's some knots that I've got to avoid. So I had to avoid that one. The rest are pretty decent. You can see in this piece of timber how many knots there are everywhere. So just had to be smart about where I was placing my timbers. When you lay your sheets over the top, you want your timbers to be in a pretty nice line, because once the timbers are on top, it's hard to see where you're going to put your screws to go down into the timber. But that's not too bad. I'll be able to live with that. And I made sure that it's trustworthy, where I can walk on every part, jump up and down. So if anyone ever needs to walk on this, it's not going to break. So happy with that, how that's turned out. So I'll pick up some iron through the week, lay that on top, and then we've got a secondary roof which is going to keep the rain off of this roof. It's quite a patchy roof. It's got a lot of holes that we had to patch up just to make it last longer. We're not going to have the existing roof exposed to the weather, and having that air gap in between, it's going to give us a lot better insulation from the heat in summer. So that's one job off the list done. Next job is to set up the air compressor. It's getting a bit darker now, but we'll try and get as much done until the sun goes down. So I just thought we might go through a few bits and pieces. So I've got a T-piece. One bit's going to go into the boat, the other bit's going to go into the shipping container. I've got to put it all together. So I was actually watching another Australian guy's sailing channel, and I saw that he didn't put thread tape on the correct way. Surprisingly, there is a bit to putting on thread tape. You just can't put it around the fitting and put it in and hope it's all going to be okay. It's going to be a certain amount of tension that goes onto your thread tape, and there's a right way and a wrong way of doing it. So basically, you'll see some people, they'll get the thread tape, they start it like this, no problem. Actually, I'm doing it the right way, so we'll swap that over. So then they've got the thread coming over the top of the reel, and then they just keep going around. But this is wrong because it's unreeling on the reel, and you're having to move this around to get it on the thread, and there's no tension on that. It's, you just sort of like making it go round, and you're trying to pull it tight, and then you end up with all this slag, and you end up generally all the time having this tail come off. Unfortunately, there was no tension put on this when they when you do it like that, and then when you go to put it in the hole and do it up, what ends up happening is this thread tape spins around and pushes up, so that the thread tape actually pushes up and doesn't actually bind into the threads, and you end up having anything that went into your fitting will have no thread on it, no thread tape, and it just all pushes up. Let's see if it happens. So basically the thread tape here has pushed itself up out of the threads, so it basically hasn't worked. So then you got to get it all out. So when doing thread tape, you don't go over, go under like that. Basically put your finger underneath, get your item, lay it on top, put your finger to hold that first run on. Now this can't unreel itself. I'm controlling it, putting as much tension. I can pull that until it breaks if I want, because this finger and this thumb is holding that. So then as you go around, you let it spin. I'm keeping tension on that the whole time. I could break that still, that tension. That's how much tension I've got on it. And each layer goes around. You can see that getting full coverage going all the way into those threads, and always got my tension on there. It can't go away from me. I can put on as much as I want, and I'm always getting full coverage. When I'm done, just pull that, and then we don't have any tail. We've got a nice thread coverage. I try and go at least half the pitch diameter covered in thread tape, and that is not going to leak, and we won't have to do that again for many years. So then put that on. I'll tighten that up with a shifter a bit later. Show you again. Find the end. Just keep going around. Till you got half the pitch diameter, and then pull. I'll put my thumb on there, so that it doesn't move the thread tape, and then pull as hard as I can, and then just smooth out that break. So that's how we put on a thread tape properly. Once again, we'll do them up with a shifter. So that's in the direction that I want it to go. So basically, a bit of a hack trick is to put your shifter on there, and if you can't, I don't want to put any pressure on these because these little spring nuts can actually break. I can't get anything on, there's no way I can turn this T-piece without hurting these. So you just put your shifter or spanner on there, and then you use a secondary spanner to turn that handle. So just a little trick. So this should be ready to go, and might just fire it up and see if there's any leaks coming out of here. So I just stopped the compressor at 500 kPa. So we're holding pressure at about 500 kPa. Just below 500 kPa. So just have a look at this, and you can see all my fittings are leaking a little bit of air. So I'll have to tighten all these up just a little bit more. So if you can see, we don't have big bits of air coming out of these two fittings now. They've all sealed up. It's just air popping out of that middle one. Now I could probably live with that, because what I don't want is to have to turn this and have it at some weird angle where I won't be able to plug in. So might leave this like this for now, and the way I might fix this is when I feel the need, I can undo this and I can change the fitting out to either have an L bend come out so I can do it up nicely on this side, or I can put a product called Stag. It's a liquid thread tape, and that will seal up. However, this is an absolute beast, 1100 litres per minute, and that little air leak is not going to drop any of my air pressure. This is 4 times more powerful than the air volume I need to blast my boat, so this compressor is not going to have a problem with that little bit of leak there. But these two are alright, and we'll leave it like this for now, and if I find out I'm having a bit of trouble, then we'll look at fixing up the leak here. But I'd rather be able to nicely plug in this side than to get a quarter of a turn and then not be able to get into the other side. So that's good enough for now. So my next job will be to get all the hoses and plumbing ready for my blaster. Now this is only a 10-gallon blaster, but it's what I have. It's not good for blasting that entire hull, which is why I hired that big blaster. but this will get all the little jobs done. You get a funnel and you put the media into here. So you can put soda blast in here, you could put garnet, put shot in there, any sort of media that you're going to use to blast, and then you do up this cap to keep the pot pressurized. You can adjust the pressure. Got a little water trap here where your air line comes in, goes into the water trap, cleans your air so you're not getting any moisture onto your substrate. And then we have this porcelain blasting nozzle. Got a bit of a break in it, so I'll have to change that out. But yeah, we've got a couple of meter hose on a blasting hose, so I'll be able to carry that up onto the deck and give each one of those welded panels a bit of a blast so that they're prepped and ready to paint. And yeah, we'll get this plumbed up next. So the next thing we're going to do is make a length of hose for the blaster. So I need at least 1 meter to get into the shipping container from the air compressor. So get a meter. We'll go 2 meters just to be sure. These little fittings here, one side has barbs on it, this side is actually seated for ball bearings to go in there and clamp for a spring loaded air fitting, pneumatic fitting. So the barb goes into the hole. Couple of things you could do to make it easier than that is to spray that with soapy water and it'll lubricate inside the rubber and it'll go in easier, or you can stick the end of the rubber hose in a pot of boiling water for a couple of minutes. It'll expand and get a bit softer and that'll slip straight on. So I've just got these stainless steel hose clamps for now. Get them on nice and quick with a screwdriver, and then once you're happy with that, get your spanner and do it up a little bit better. When I'm finished, I like to see that the hose clamps are indenting the rubber on the hose. So to do the big hose, I'm just going to squirt some soapy water in. Get all the excess out. Barb end goes in the hose. Going to push it down with the bench. Till it rests up against this shoulder here. A little bit of a shoulder just there. So I'm about to give it a little try. I had a full face mask, face shield and everything, but I don't know where that is right now. So I've got my welding jacket on to stop penetration get onto my skin there. Without having my full face shield, I've got goggles. Sand can ricochet in all directions. I want my goggles on. Hearing protection's a must when you're blasting. And long sleeve gloves. So welding gloves is fine, but I got these nice leather gloves. So we'll give it a go. Hopefully it works. You guys might not be able to see because it's now getting to night time, but it did a reasonable good job. It's got a pretty nice profile on it. I'll measure that profile next time we blast something, and I'll show you guys how to do that. But basically it got all the rust off. Happy about that. So there's a few issues with the blaster. This little pressure relief valve, so once this builds up in enough pressure, that pressure relief valve is supposed to pop and not let this build up with too much pressure and explode or something like that. So that pressure relief valve is always open at the moment. So I've got to get a new pressure relief valve so that it'll store enough air, because we're sending the air in, but half the air is pissing out that pressure relief valve before it gets into the hose down here and out to the blaster. So I only got half the amount of working pressure, which is making it a bit hard to blast with. The other problem is I think I'm not getting enough air to the blaster. So I've got 1/2 inch hose here, but it reduces down to 1/4 inch or 3/4 inch, and then it opens up big again. So I think we need to open up the air that's feeding in, because while I was blasting I was checking the pressure in the actual air compressor, and there's tons of air in the compressor, but it's not coming through here enough. So I'm either going to double the hose and run 2 hoses to get double the amount of air into the pot, and change this out so that I'm feeding more air into the pot, because the pressure was just dropping as soon as I started blasting. So I'll have to fix that up, but I've got a good profile on the vise. I got all the rust off. I'll give it a lick of paint before it gets too dark and before I get eaten by all the mozzies. Bought a spotlight a little while ago. Not sure how the light's going to turn up on the camera, but see how we go. So I've just got some hammer tone finish for the bench vise. See how that comes up. Well, I think that's good enough. It's going to look good once it dries. I like the look of the hammer tone finishes. So we will clean this bench up. I may move the bench to this side of the staircase, losing half your area there. But yeah, it's a good test run for the blaster. I found out all the issues before I get it on the boat, and see how it works once I fix those up. So that's the end of another episode. So we got the air compressor working, we got the sandblaster sorted, and we've got the roof structure built on the shipping container. So don't know what I plan for next week, but stay tuned and we'll find out. So thanks for watching, guys. See you next week.